Greetings, programs. Welcome back to the grid. I am Sark, and today's game is Grapes. Perhaps some Wrath. We're looking at our splines here that we've put in for the grapevines. Last week, before my audio was cut off somehow, I talked about these sort of back and forth curves I was practicing on, and I'm pretty happy with this result. I feel like the time spent practicing with the tablet paid off when I went to put these in a much more sort of mechanical way, right? So in 3ds Max you've got your spline tools, and each vertex can be adjusted with these Beziers. I'll show how that works, right? So if I want to lay this in, make a cousin of this line, all I have to do is sort of plunk it in like that. And I go to vertex mode, select each vertex and change how it behaves. So I can flip it to Bezier, I can move the handles, and it's easy to get these sort of snaking S-curves that you might expect the vine to have. Now it's not all that simple because it's no good just to have it in 2 dimensions. You've got to work it out in both your front and your top view at least, and then you sort of have to give some attention again to some other angles. So let me select the vines I've done. I think that's most of them at least, and I'll hide everything else and show you that once I had each of these laid in here, I had to go back over, and from this point of view it would have been just a straight line. So no big deal. You take all the same verts and you draw a very similar curve, appropriate to, I was trying to match up my perspective, but just also appropriate to what you feel looks right, looks natural. And I also plunked in a few extra branches just because I was afraid that in between the grapes, as I began to lay them in there, there are some spots where you should see a few bits of vine poking through. Now, I didn't go and do every last piece of the vine that should be there, because a lot of it's not going to matter. It's going to be covered by the grapes, so I just did what I thought we would need. But those are done. They're a pretty simple process. And then I also did these bowls. The artist appears to have one bowl inside another. I don't know if that was an intended process to sort of strain the liquid, right? If you wash grapes, water might pool in the bottom of the bowl, so you might have a bowl with holes in it, and then another I don't know if that makes any sense. Probably the artist just thought one bowl would look good inside another, would create some complexity for his painting, and thereby arrange them that way. I don't know. If anybody knows better, let me know. As it is, these are really, really easy to do. I didn't bother to make a video about it because I'm lazy. No, because I already did a video about the clay jar, and it's the exact same technique. So I thought it would be really redundant, maybe boring. Here are my lines. So they're separate objects. Here's my outside bowl, here's my inside bowl. They're probably not exactly the way they would be, but they give the correct impression that I wanted. So you use your lathe tool. If you draw the right side of the bowl and you set your object to minimum and your inside line, right? So I have an outside line and an inside line, and as long as my outside line and my inside line end up at the same place, right on top of each other, the lathe goes off perfectly. I did adjust the proportion of it a little bit. The first time I drew it, it was too narrow. So, you don't always get it on your first try. But this was pretty easy to do. And again, it's the same tricks and tools, using the Bezier curves quite a bit, and in some places some corners and things to get the desired effect. In fact, I think I had a corner there and I switched it. I switched it to a curve. Yeah, because I just wanted I wanted a very sharp edge, but I wanted it to not be a perfect sort of 90-degree angle or something. That would be too sharp. As it is now, you get the impression of some shadows in there, but it's not as jarring as if it were a corner. So those are the tricks with the spline tools that were used to get the rest of these objects laid in. So all we have left is our grapes, and I'm just gonna go at some grapes, I guess. I don't really have any plan for that, so bear with me. If I don't talk a lot, it's probably just because I'm thinking it through in real time. I know some people plan these videos out and edit them and stuff. Not really my style, so I think I would spend more time planning and editing than I spent making videos, so better that we just make it. This one's been scaled. It hasn't been scaled. Why is it so tall? Because our original box was off kilter? Yes. So the height and width should be similar. Oh, wait, not that. This. Yeah, something more like that. Maybe this particular grape's a little smaller. So I'm just throwing an open subdiv with 2 iterations on a box to do my grids, and that way, to do my grapes, and that way I can always sort of adjust other things about them without interfering with the round shape or the topology of it. Often you could put a little taper. I think I did on the other one, because they're not always perfectly symmetrical. Sometimes they're a little more egg-shaped. Alright. I think this is the one I want. I should exaggerate it a little bit until I find out which one I want. That's the one I want. So probably like not that crazy though, right? Like very small amounts. Make sure it's really sitting on the ground. So I guess I get into trouble this way because as a box, I'm sure it was before it got sort of shrunken by that process. So we just balance those there. And then, you know, if I'm being reasonable, I'm probably just going to copy these quite a bit, right? So to copy objects in 3ds Max, you just hold the Shift key, you get your Move tool, and you pull it along. So there is Grape the Third. Should I do... Some people would use a particle system to sort of string these along the vines, and if I was making more than 2 vines worth of grapes, I definitely would. As it is, I don't think it's going to be too bad to sort of one by one these in here. I'm just going to choose a grape from my image and say, okay, you are that grape. And then try to put it there, right? So let's say it's this one in the middle. Do all these light colored grapes first before we get to the dark ones. I don't know why, it's just the first one I picked. Not too bad, right? Oh, and then I got forwards and backwards. So how far forward? Well, this vine is back here, actually. So I guess this grape is a little bit larger. So we'll go down to our box. And we can also leave this on. This is the Show End Result button. So that's actually the better way to work sometimes. In this way, if I change the scale, I don't have to go check to see what it looks like when it's round. I'm just changing the scale as I go. So it should be a little fatter there. Maybe a little more here. And maybe even a little taller. Of course, I could do all this with the non-uniform scale tool and just sort of eyeball it after the fact. One of the things I do want to do is make my view big here. Okay. Rotate a little. Pretty happy with the placement of that grape. Man, these grapes are huge. Like, if anybody knows a place on Earth where grapes are actually this big. Or it's a small peach, I guess. And I've misgauged the scale of the table. That's conceivable. Or the artist exaggerated the size of the grapes because he wanted, or she wanted, I don't know, he or she, wanted just to be able to focus on the detail that he saw. So that could be it. I think this one's going to flip the other way. Of course, we're going to use some tricks with reflections in our materials later on, and that'll help distinguish these so they all look a little different anyway. If I was, I don't know, might be reasonable to put some noise on these or something. I'm going to make this one a little plumper. There we are. I'm just hitting E and W to switch between my rotate and move tools. R is scale if you're looking for that. It's just a kind of a zen process. We're going to make a lot of copies of grapes. Nothing special. You could probably skip to the end of this video, see the results, and know exactly how I got there, so you don't need to necessarily watch the whole thing. But as long as you're here, we could chat. I said there might be wrath. Oh, they can't all be aligned like this, though. Here we so do some of this. I'm just going to try and follow the general curve of my vine. So whatever part of the vine they're near to in my perspective view, I'm going to try and move them to that part of the vine in my, yeah. Pull this one back this way a little bit. Oh, they all got a lot smaller, didn't they? Well, that's okay. I might live with that. I can just always make more grapes. Mine doesn't have to match exactly in the end. I could also make them bigger, so we'll think about that as we go. One of the things I might want to do is just take my material and drop it down to half opacity or something. Maybe even 20%. 20%'s a little bit too little. This kind of helps me do this, though. Just using one basic material for everything right now. That helps. This grape just needs to be bigger. Could use a non-uniform scale, but in the interest of making them all kind of unique, there. It's just some monster grapes. So I think there's another one back behind here. There's probably a bunch of grapes I'm not actually going to make too, right? That are going to be on the other side. I probably should make them just so the reflections are more realistic when we go to do that procedurally. Suddenly my transparency is not so nice. Okay. Turn off our wireframe. Helps unclutter things a little bit. I think this one just needs to be on the other side of the vine. Blow this up. Okay. So if I've got a little funny bit of vine going the wrong way or something, we can fix that later too. I was hoping the grapes would mostly hide them. I don't know why I made them. because I want to see their reflections from the translucent bits when we get our materials done. I guess that's my plan. I'm gonna lower my mouse sensitivity a little bit. I don't want to zoom this in because it will alter our. Actually, I wonder if it will. Yeah, it doesn't help me. So C, P, just to keep from bumping the camera. And I've certainly lowered my mouse sensitivity. It's nice to have a mouse that can just do that with a couple button clicks. I am a fan of the Logitech G502. The wired one was not exorbitantly overpriced. I do prefer a wired mouse. I generally prefer wired everything. I want wired internet lines running through my walls. That's so that when you go troubleshooting, you can be sure of what's working and what isn't and why. There are endless reasons your wireless may not be functioning, unrelated to anything that you can do anything about. So, when a physical cable is not working, it's very easy and quick to determine whether or not the problem is the cable. You simply replace it. And then if it works, you know the other cable's bad. If it doesn't work, then you've narrowed something out. The wireless, it could be your neighbor's microwave. Okay. Enough ranting about that. I told you there'd be wrath. I'm grumpy this morning. I don't know why. No, yes, maybe. Definitely not. Mayhaps. Alright, which grape are we trying to... Yeah, that one back there? Okay. It's actually almost straight up and down a little bit. Okay. Next grape. There's one up top. We could do this one up top. It's almost like it's almost laying like this. And then it's definitely on the other side. Somewhere in there. Probably a little more laying flat like that. They can bump ends a little bit. It's not, you know, it's not of the greatest importance that they never clip. In a perfect world, I guess we'd go in and adjust each one so it doesn't, but probably I'm already talking myself into that, so I better stop. Better stop discussing such a thought. At least not until we've done everything else and gotten all the materials in there, and we can consider going back and adjusting each grape if we really feel like we need to. I don't see any reason to do it at this stage. This one's a little further forward, might be a little smaller. It's toward the end of the vine, right? Do they get less juice on that end? I don't know. Less nourishment because it's younger part of the vine, conceivably. Ended up being a little bit flat, like a... Yeah, okay. Not long enough. Okay. Which one did I want? I guess I thought I wanted this one. Okay. You know, of course there would be other bits of vine coming up this way. We don't need to draw those. But if we wanted to, it would come off right here, right? You know, before Steinbeck stole it for that book, what a... Not Steinbeck's best work, in my opinion. That phrase was was associated with liberation theology. It was associated with the idea that when enough suffering had occurred, that that it would bear fruit and ripen into a comeuppance for the oppressor. And many people, I think, you guys can look into this and let me know if I'm wrong, but from what I understand, many people felt as though, and when I say people, I mean people like Frederick Douglass, felt as though Sherman's destructive swath cut through the most productive parts of the Confederacy was a material incarnation of God's justice. Right? I mean, you can look at the words of the Battle Hymn of the Republic and find just that. Mine eyes have seen the coming of the glory of the Lord. He is tramping out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored. Well, what are the grapes of wrath? What is it to tramp out a vintage? Well, apparently it's the process whereby grapes begin, you get the juice out of the grapes so that they can become wine. So the idea is that they're ripe and they're ready to go. He is meting out God's justice with his terrible swift sword. Yeah. That's some heavy stuff. Nothing too cheerful about any of that. His truth is marching on. One might have hoped that... I don't know what I'm doing with this grape. That's what I get for talking. One might have hoped that the misery and destruction all the wealth piled, all the blood spilled, would have been enough. But it could be that there are some things that are never finished. So, what do I mean by any of that? I don't want to comment too particularly on anything happening. I guess what I mean is that it is best to be good to people, because you never know how badly it might come around for you. Try to be good to people. There. That's what I have to say today. A little bit of patience and kindness is not too expensive, especially for the people you disagree most with. You have little to lose. All right. We're making progress. It's slow, but it's coming. Only have like umpty 9 grapes to go. So there are lots of ways to procedurally distribute these things, but I think placing them by hand was the right choice here. There really aren't that many, And man, I really need to start making this whole shape rounder though, don't I? There needs to be some bits that come out here. Okay. What was I saying? I was saying that it's advantageous to place these by hand because there really aren't that many of them. There's a couple dozen at most. And if we were to do it in some procedural manner, we would either spend more time developing a script or inventing some piece of code to do it properly for us, or much more likely end up with a result that was, if we were in a hurry, if we were to do it as faster, the script or code we developed would be unnatural, right? The distribution of the grapes along the vine would be too even or too random, which is also a kind of problem, because nature is unpredictable to a rigid mind, but it is not, or unpredictable to, I guess, a single person's ability to perceive. But it is not random. It has, just as we were looking at with the curves of the vines earlier, it has certain bits of elegance that manifest, and you can, I'm not going to speculate on the reasons for such things. Newton was into trying to figure out if there was some unmoved mover or something. I'm just suggesting that for whatever reason, you could perhaps cite random reasons. Plants and other aspects of nature have very discernible patterns if you go looking for them, and then they break the pattern when and where your eye maybe least expects it. So there's some sort of beauty in the place between regular patterns and look at that, I have a nice triangle. Triangles are good for art. Okay. There's some sort of beauty between predictable patterns and I want this grape a little smaller. Oh, I reached for my scale tool. No. Do this by hand. What was I saying? There's a beauty between predictable patterns and the unexpected. Right? A bunch of posts in a perfectly straight row without anything unusual about them is not particularly attractive. A complete tangled mess with no discernible beginning or end is not attractive. Something between that can be, really can be. No, that's not our camera. Why does it all feel like it's off kilter? Everything's still in the right spot, I think. Yeah. Just some of these need to lean further over the bowl, maybe? Yeah, and they need some other grapes behind them. So that's how perhaps we'll work that. Let's hide this bowl. That'll help us out. So which one are you supposed to be? I guess you're supposed to be that one. I guess. Alright, let's just pull some of these away and start rethinking about which one's which. Alright, this one goes here. This one I don't know about. I guess it's supposed to be that one, so I'm going to rotate it this way a little bit. Let's pretend this one is that one on the end then. And copy this one, I guess. Make it a heck of a lot bigger. That's fine. Starting to work for me. I mean, if it's not a bunch of grapes, I don't really know what it is. Let's take this one and put it up here. Let's rotate it another way. Okay, you can be this one. Scale it a little bit. Yeah. Okay. And I don't really like that, do I? I want this to come in, I want this to go back. And I'm just going to accept that sort of thing a little bit. I want a small one. Is this one small? Seems kind of small. Relative. All things being relative here. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, where did I want it? Actually, I'm going to put one there later, but I want it here. Yeah, it's alright. I'll flip it around. And put another one over here. I'm probably talking too quiet. My volume levels are not hyper consistent. I don't have like some expensive Blue Yeti mic or something. So if I'm speaking too softly or too loudly, your ears are not deceiving you. You're fine. I'm just off kilter. So sometimes as you work, you tend to mutter things to yourself, and you're forgetting that you might be trying to share the knowledge. You might think this is irrelevant. I'm just going to mutter this under my breath while I work, and you're not really thinking about other people tuning in. Man, these ones got huge. It's just like anything over 2 is too big, especially down this end of the vine. Those are the rules that I've convinced myself of. So there. Yeah, I don't care if it's different. This one too small. So that's not too bad. That's a good bundle of grapes. I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of these on my own time. I don't think there's anything particularly worth learning about them. I'll go ahead and do these ones. But I'm gonna leave the other branch to another sitting. And I won't make a video about that. But next video for me will probably be an exploration of some lighting options. So get our scene lit, get the shadows in, and then we'll be able to start having a fun time with materials. Let's just plunk in these. So I'm going to copy paste these taper in this open subdiv. And once I've got all these done in this way, obviously they're going to need special attention. The one sitting out at the table, I'm actually don't paste instance because then one will affect the other. The ones sitting out of the table, I think, are going to suffer the most scrutiny. So these ones really need to to have their own individual characters. Right. Okay, what are you? You the one that goes there? Oh, that won't do. That won't do at all. Okay. Bring all these down to earth. Down to the surface of the table. Probably there was definitely a way to like randomize all these a bit. Before I just popped those settings on them. These make them a little rounder. Mm-hmm. 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 Let's do that one. And then do a little of that. Not a lot. Okay. So because I've got a taper on them and I didn't move that, but I rotated a bunch of them, the taper effectively goes in different directions and helps me to achieve a little bit of that randomness. I'm not allowed to move them on the x-axis, and that's what makes this a little tricky. This one just needs to be bigger, right? If it's supposed to be that blue one there. Okay. There. That's kind of okay. This one maybe wants a little bigger. Something like that. Let's hide these. Oh, there's actually... Hold on. I think that one's actually stacked on top, right? So... How do we get away with that? Come over here. Well, there would have to be... These have to come forward a little anyway. There'd have to be, like, a few duplicates we don't see. So this one's going to come here, and it's going to go like that. Maybe like that. And... one comes here. And that gives room for maybe a slightly more different one. He's sitting on top. Doesn't really look like it is, does it? How about this? Guess that's a little more convincing. Settle for something like that. Okay. So, we got a lot more grapes to do. That's it for today. You guys, good luck, have fun, stay safe, enjoy your summer.